would you react if you found out your spouse lied about their past before you even got married? Today, we're going to find out. I'm Leah Carey, intimacy and relationship coach, and we're here to talk about the good, the bad, and the downright terrible advice given by Dear Abby. Do you swear by Dear Abby or at Dear Abby? Let's get into it. Throne in Missouri writes, Dear Abby, I've been married 27 years with 2 kids. My wife recently revealed to me that she was when she was 14, but she said it wasn't violent. She also said she had several adult partners when she was 15 and 16. We had discussed our past prior to marriage, and these things were not mentioned. If they had been, I wouldn't have married her. I have a hard time even looking at her now. I feel like telling her I want a divorce, but I'm looking for a second opinion about what I should do. Am I being ridiculous for wanting a divorce over things that happened 35 years ago? Abby responds, Dear Throne, consent laws can be confusing and can change over time, and a lot may depend on the age of each partner. However, your wife may not have previously discussed this because she was afraid your reaction would be as over the top as it has been. Before you decide to divorce her for being victimized as a teenager, I urge you to consult a licensed therapist, either alone or with her. This is another situation where I don't think that Abby's advice is wrong. It just doesn't go nearly far enough. When a 14-year-old experiences something that they're not ready for, and whoever could be ready to be assaulted, that is not something that you should ever be ready for. But when it happens to a 14-year-old, that's going to get burned into your nervous system. This has actually been shown to be true. And you can think of it like if you see a dog who gets a real fright and they get all tense and uptight. And then a little while later, they'll shake it all out. They'll do the dog shake thing. That is the dog's way of resetting their nervous system, is to shake out the friction and the tightness that has gotten caught up in their body so that they... What in the world? This is not meant to be a fireworks video. I'm so sorry. Okay, that was really funny. That is the dog's way of resetting so that that trauma or that upset doesn't affect them going forward into the rest of their life. Now, if a dog has experienced trauma in an ongoing way, they've been abused or they haven't been fed enough or they've been in incredibly stressful situations, that dog is going to hold a lot of that fear and upset inside of themselves. And that's why when you go to a shelter, you might end up adopting a traumatized dog because there has been so much trauma that their nervous system hasn't been able to shake it all out. So this shaking process is actually common to most mammals. It's something that our nervous system has developed over eons to deal with trauma. Because we all at some point have something happen to us. Hopefully it's not as severe as an assault, though unfortunately for many girls and boys, it is assault. But anything that hits your body in a way that causes your body to tense up and your nervous system to go, oh no, that's going to be held in your body until you have an opportunity to shake it out and just let your body relax. Now, here's the problem. As humans, we have forgotten how to go through this shaking and releasing of trauma process to release the nervous system and allow it to relax. In fact, in a lot of cultures, we are told that when something bad happens, we should just bottle it up and not respond at all, which means that we're not only not doing the thing that would help, we're making things even worse by not being able to have any response to it. which means that as we grow, all of those traumas that we haven't been able to dispel get lodged into our nervous system. And our nervous system responds as if those things are continuing to happen on a constant basis, which is why you can get so easily triggered by something that seems really minor, but it reminds your nervous system of something that has happened in the past, and it thinks, oh, it's still happening, and it has what feels like a really outsized response. Okay, I'm going to make a little bit of an assumption here, but to be fair, I think it's not an unreasonable assumption. I'm going to assume that this man is involved in some type of purity culture, something that says a woman has been spoiled if she has been with men before. I think that his assertion that he never would have married her if he knew that these things had happened gives us a peek into his idea that his wife should have been pure when he met her and married her. So now, if he comes from a background of purity culture, almost by definition, she must have come from a background in purity culture as well, because that's how they would have met each other. And people outside of purity culture tend to be viewed with a lot of suspicion. Yes, I've just made a leap in logic, but I think it's a fair leap, at least for this conversation. So let's assume that this 14-year-old has grown up in a culture where she is supposed to save herself. She is supposed to be pure as the white snow, and she's been assaulted. The message that is given to young women is that even assault, which they had absolutely no choice in, even assault can cause them to be sullied. So what is she going to do? She's not going to talk about it. She's going to bury it deep in herself and try to pretend like it never happened. But then you say, why would she have slept with these other men when she was in her teens? Well, because that is not an unusual response to having to bury something that large. There can often be a response that says, well, if I'm already sullied, I might as well go and just have fun. Another way that it can turn out is that somebody feels something buried like this and they think, well, maybe I should prove that I'm no good by going out and having more partners. There are a lot of ways that this can set up in somebody's brain, but they all make logical sense when you hear the person talk about it and you hear the background, the voices that they heard growing up. It suddenly becomes clear, like, oh, that actually made logical sense to them and their brain. Another option might be that if she wasn't getting the kind of care and concern she needed at home, that she might have gotten that care and concern from these other people who she became intimate with as a teenager. She might have been filling an unmet need by getting some physical care, some physical intimacy, and some emotional care. So there could be reasons for this that span all the way from, wow, that sounds really hard. I'm so sorry that you feel so damaged that now you're going to try and just prove how damaged you are, all the way to, wow, I really get it, that you were trying to get the love and the support that you needed, and this was the only way to do it. Okay, so we've looked at the assault, we've looked at the other partners. Now let's get to the husband. He seems to believe that he was owed the story of her trauma from when she was a teenager. And let me tell you this, you do not owe anybody the story of your trauma, ever. That is yours to share when you're ready, when you're comfortable, and when you feel safe. When you're ready could be in 3 days, it could be in 30 years. You get to decide what that timeline is. When you're comfortable means that you feel like this is a person who can hear that from you and hold you and be with you in that space without rejecting you. and when you feel safe, like this isn't going to blow up your world. And I would suggest that this man saying, now I want to divorce her because she was not the person she told me she was when we met 30 years ago, that is not a safe person. So why would she have shared this with him? Not to mention that we don't always have access to the words. I can say for myself, as someone who has experienced a lot of trauma and who continues to sort it out on a daily basis, it's not unusual for me to tell my therapist a story and then say, wow, I have never told anybody that before, even though it happened when I was 7. So 40 plus years ago, we don't always have access to the words until the day that suddenly we do. And finally, the thing I want to say to her husband, the thing that I want to shake him for is, why are you making her responsible for something that was done to her? She did not choose to be assaulted. Nobody chooses to be assaulted. I want to be careful and say some people may choose to reenact old assaults in some type of kink situation, and that is absolutely valid. But she was never responsible for the initial assault. And how dare you treat her as if she had any say in that happening? How dare you treat her as though she needs to answer for something that was done to her? So I've been a little harsh with Throne in Missouri in the last few minutes, and I want to be clear that people who grew up in any type of purity culture or purity adjacent culture, regardless of gender, get messed up. So I also have empathy for the letter writer around the fact that he didn't get taught how to deal with something like this appropriately. That doesn't mean that he couldn't, learn to help, but he is not entirely at fault for not knowing how to respond appropriately when all he has to fall back on are the teachings of purity culture. So if I were the one responding to this letter, I would make some of the same recommendations that Abby does. Abby's response before you decide to divorce her for being victimized as a teenager. See, here she does pick up on the fact that he is blaming her for something that was done to her. Abby writes, I urge you to consult a licensed therapist, either alone or with her. And here's the thing that I would want to add to that. I would want to make sure that they are seeing a trauma-informed therapist or coach who understands the dynamics of purity culture, because there are a lot of therapists who are excellent therapists but don't necessarily work with trauma. And if you see a coach or a therapist who's not familiar with the damage that can be done inside purity culture, you can actually end up being even more damaged. So it's really important that you work with somebody who is trauma informed and who's really familiar with the workings of purity culture. And another thing I would suggest, and to be honest, this is something that you're not always privy to when you are searching for a therapist or a coach, but I would want to find somebody who actually has been through some of these experiences themselves. That's why I'm beginning to focus my work a lot more on people who grew up in trauma-filled, high control, purity culture, narcissistic abuse, cult, all of those things, because that is the background I come from, and I deeply, deeply understand it. Somebody who doesn't have a lived experience of that trauma can absolutely be helpful, but there's a level of validation that comes from working with somebody who's been there too. Now, if I were working with the letter writer's wife, I would be hard pressed to not tell her to dump the apple. I mean, that's not my job. I don't get to tell people to make decisions like that. But it is important for the wife to understand that she has choices. She may be staying with this man because she believes that he is the best she can get because she was sullied as a teenager. She may believe all sorts of things that we would hear and be like, that doesn't make any sense, because of the experience, the trauma that she had as a teenager. And if she's married to somebody whose first response to, I had something horrible happen to me, is, oh my God, I'm going to divorce you, she may not be in a safe space to do the kind of healing work she needs to do. So if you grew up in one of these high control environments, narcissistic abuse, purity culture, cults, etc., and you're struggling with questions of whether you are okay regardless of the things that have happened to you, or whether you still have worth as a human even though you weren't a virgin on your wedding night, I want to invite you to check out my Freedom from Purity audit. This is a relatively low-cost experience where you get to share with me all of your questions. Tell me all the things you learned. Tell me your hopes and dreams, and ask the hard questions. And I will send you back a highly personalized video specific to you. This is not a thing where I just make 6 videos and then I choose the most appropriate one. No, this is specific to you. I will be speaking directly to you and answering your specific questions. So you can find Freedom from Purity at the link in the description. And if you're interested in more sort of consistent coaching, you can find all of that at leahcarey.com. I hope this was helpful for those of you who have trauma to be able to think about how trauma doesn't have a timeline. And also for those of you who live with or love somebody with trauma to think about how to interact with them. What do you think of Throne in Missouri's question? Should he divorce her? Should she divorce him? Let me know in the comments. I look forward to hearing what you think. And remember, you are worthy of love, and I'm going to help you get there, one conversation at a time.